Greetings, travelers. It is Friday, May 15th. You know what that means. It is time for another edition of 3 o'clock coffee, where we sit around, drink a little bit of coffee or tea or whatever beverage you'd like to drink. Maybe have a little snack and talk about astronomy, science. Listen to my clickety-clackety of my keyboard as I move around and show pictures and articles about things that we found interesting from this week. And we're starting off with something that I actually shared on our Facebook page. If you haven't followed it, please go over there and click that like button, or follow, or subscribe, or however it works over there at this point. And in any case, we're going to be talking about this. This is Jupiter. Now, if you've never seen Jupiter, you're missing out. You can see it in the early morning. You can click on over on our monthly sky updates. You can see how to find Jupiter. Right now it's in the early morning sky before sunrise. So is Saturn, and so is Mars. Now Jupiter, you're probably used to seeing it looking like this. This is a picture of Jupiter from the Hubble Space Telescope, and it's looking at what we call visible light. And, well, visible light's not the only thing that exists. Now, these are not the exact same image. This is just a image of the planet Jupiter, but this next one looks vastly different, and that's why we thought this was so cool. There's actually lots of different forms of light. Real quick, we should probably talk about the electromagnetic spectrum. Alright, very quickly, we should probably talk about light, the electromagnetic spectrum. And what we can actually see, what we see here is, well, really two things. One, it's the light prism experiment, where you shine a white light through it, through a glass prism, and it breaks up into its constituent parts. It's also a really famous album. It's Dark Side of the Moon. Shh, don't tell no one. Nonetheless, this actually leads right into what I want to talk about, what we can actually see, the visible light spectrum. It's literally the rainbow of colors that our eyes can see. And that, of course, is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And that is what our eyes can see. That's what our eyes are built for. And so all the colors we see, all the colors of the rainbow, if you're not colorblind, of course, that's all we can see. So when we look up into the sky, look up into the universe, that's it. We can only see what our eyes can see. However, there's a lot more to light than just what we call the visible light spectrum. As it turns out, the visible light spectrum is just a small piece of what we call the electromagnetic spectrum. And unfortunately, this flipped everything from right to left, but let's ignore that. As you go to one side, you have longer wavelengths, lower frequencies, and lower energy. And so you're going to have radio waves, microwaves, and infrared in those sections of lower wavelength light, lower frequency light, lower energy. As you get above what our eyes can see, you get into the realm of ultraviolet, and then you get X-rays and gamma rays. Those are very short wavelengths. They are high frequency, high energy light. Actually, those are also very dangerous to our human life. At least gamma rays are definitely dangerous to human life. Flipping things back around, we're looking at kind of examples of where you find these light sources in your daily life. Again, radio waves. There's different kinds of radio waves. There's long wavelength and short wavelength radios, ultra high frequency radio waves, sort of like old UHF TVs. Nonetheless, that's stuff that we use on our daily basis. Cell phones are in the kind of on the bridge between radio waves and microwaves, low energy microwaves, high energy radio waves, of course, depending on the type of phone you got. Then once you get into microwaves, many of us have microwaves in our kitchen. That's how we can actually warm up our food. Once you get past that, you get into what's called infrared, and that's heat, for lack of better phrasing. There are certain cameras, FLIR cameras, for example, that actually detect heat. You use that for night vision, for motion detection and stuff like that. And that's actually something we can see around the universe itself. We can actually put telescopes out or send them up into space and actually pick up infrared heat signatures from various sources. Above what our visible light spectrum is, you've got ultraviolet, and again, that's something that does get through our atmosphere, sort of. Not really the best, but that's kind of what gives you a sunburn from our own sun. X-rays and gamma rays don't make their way through our atmosphere, and so to see them, we need to put observatories in space to actually be able to detect these things, and that's high energy, high frequencies, a lot of light that we just can't see. But interestingly enough, where the X-rays and the gamma rays exist in the universe, that's where the more interesting things are happening. So that's around magnetars and quasars and, you know, really high energy exotic things in our universe. But again, we can't see them with our own eyes. But we can actually kind of make combinations of these things. So we can make visible light cameras, or telescopes for that matter, infrared, ultraviolet. You can put them all together, you layer them over each other. You can take the same picture basically from multiple devices and layer them on top of each other and see highlights of some structures and lowlights of others, and then see kind of where they lie in the energy spectrum. It's very interesting. But yeah, just wanted to mention that real fast on how light works and the EM spectrum. We should probably get back to what we were talking about. So let's do that right now. Alright, so let's take a look back at this. So now we're looking again at an infrared picture of Jupiter. We see some very warm areas in the clouds. Now, what does this actually mean? As it turns out, the various probes and satellites and observatories that were looking at Jupiter actually see different things because of what they're able to look for. Obviously, Gemini is going to be looking for thermal or infrared heat signatures. The Hubble looks at reflected light, and that's what we're used to seeing when we look through a telescope or see an image of the Hubble, from the Hubble, I should say. Juno, which is nice and up close, is actually looking at radio waves, and so it's looking at a very different part of the cloud structure. You're going to see a lot more lightning strikes and things like that. When you combine them all together, you get a much clearer picture than you would if you were just looking through visible light, which is, again, what we can see with our eyes. Now, there's actually an article about this that I'll link in the description box down below. And the most important thing, there's that picture we were just talking about. This article is from space.com. Pretty easy read, but the coolest picture there is actually this one. It actually looks at kind of stacking all the images together here. So you got the red, green, blue, the RGB. This is visible light right here on the left-hand side. This one's thermal, and you're kind of stacking. If you stack the images over each other, you notice something kind of interesting. What's dark to our eyes is very, very bright to the infrared eye, and in this case it looks like there's actually a lot of heat or convection happening in these clouds. And this is actually an ultraviolet image, and you see again the structures look very different depending on which style of light you use. So again, very, very cool. We're actually going to go ahead and link this as well in the description box down below. This is the actual article that all this data is coming from. This is actually the scientific paper that was submitted with the data from all three of these imaging devices. And again, it's kind of a dry read because it is a scientific paper. That's just the way it goes. But if you're interested in kind of reading a little bit about some of the data, how these instruments actually work, what they're looking for, and kind of what they have to pay attention to, like on this slide right here, or this figure I should say, there's actually some spots on the camera. It actually says bad pixels or detector artifacts. So you have to actually pay attention to what you're putting out there in your scientific research, including problems with your imaging devices. So I'll link this down below if you want to take a quick read of it. You can also download it, I believe, as a PDF. Is it up top? Yep, it's right there. You can click that, download it for yourself, and get some extra science knowledge in your noggin. Moving right along, we're looking at another article. This one's from Science Alert. There was a rocket falling from space that's never a good thing. This particular one was a Chinese rocket. It happened to have an uncontrolled fall, which means it was not controlled by little rockets or thrusters, pushing it in directions where people would want it to fall. This particular rocket fell just northwest of Senegal, and well, uncontrolled falls are never a good thing. When you put something in orbit, there is a risk of it either colliding with something else, something colliding into it, or it coming down eventually. We call it space debris, or just, it's literally just trash floating around. Sometimes it's little bolts, things left over, stuff that's floated away from other things that have been launched into space. In this case, it's a chunk of a rocket. It's pretty big. It could cause a lot of damage when it comes down and hits the Earth. This particular one landed, thankfully, in the water. Not too much to talk about there, just kind of a small reminder that, we do need to take care of the space around the Earth, not only the Earth, but the space around it. That includes low Earth orbit. Eventually, over time, there's just going to be so much debris, so much junk up there, that it'll be really hard to launch stuff into space if we don't start cleaning it up somehow. I'll actually do a little video on space debris in the future, not too long from now. Speaking of things in space nearby, this is actually something I've talked about in our sky update. There's a comet named Comet SWAN, and it was only visible in the southern hemisphere for a little while. As it turns out, it's now transitioning from the southern hemisphere into the northern hemisphere, and so we're actually going to be able to see it. It's not very bright, but it is actually now visible in the northern hemisphere along the horizon, north-northeast. It's not super bright, but you can actually see it without a telescope. If you have a pair of binoculars, you could probably point it up there and actually see it pretty well. Not a super spectacular comet, but it's not every day we're going to actually be able to see comets. So I'm going to go ahead and link this article down below so you can kind of click around. There is I believe this is a Twitter page for the comet. Lots of really cool pictures of it. And again, where you want to look is going to be north-northwest. North-northeast, I should say. Right before sunrise. Can be over the next week or so. Very short time frame. Hopefully you'll have clear skies. Again, next week. Probably the best viewing of this comet as it approaches the sun. We'll see how it goes. And again, the tail points away from the sun. Just the way it works, and I believe I've talked about that in our sky update as well for the mechanics of how comets work. So you're going to want to click on that. I think I can put a link for it somewhere around here, but we'll see how that goes. Probably should make that a little bigger. Sorry about that. There we go. That's a little better. Constellation Perseus and Triangulum. What you're looking for in the eastern sky. Switching gears, this was actually kind of fun. Something I just wanted to kind of share and boost knowledge of it. There's going to be a little new lunar rover, and it's part of the Artemis program, going back to the moon. And what they're looking for is for people to develop tools, payloads for these little mini lunar rovers, I guess we'll call them. There's actually a prize pool listed of $160,000. I am not sure how that gets broken up. Maybe it depends on what you design. I don't think one person's getting the whole thing, but there is a time limit on this. I believe it ends at the end of June. You're going to want to click on the article itself to take a look. So if you know anybody that has any engineering background, or just someone has a passing interest in going to the moon, there's some guidelines that you can click on to see how you want to design these things, what their maximum size can be, weight, things like that. So, and also the actual purposes of these payloads, what they actually want to study with them. So kind of an interesting thing. There we go. There's the prize pool and how it gets broken up. $160,000 broken up amongst, looks like 6 prizes. No, there's actually more. Look at that. There's 5 third-place prizes, 3 third-place prizes for that one. So actually, there's a lot of prizes available. Hey, you never know. Give it a shot. Read through this and maybe submit something. Who knows? Maybe you can get a chunk of that cash for yourself and for your ingenuity. Speaking of designing craft, this right here is the Mars Perseverance lander. This rover, I should say, has been loaded up into its final configuration before it goes off to Mars. It's always amazing to me how this works. These rovers, they started out kind of small. The original rover was Mars Pathfinder, and it was about the size of a microwave. And then you had the Mars Exploration Rovers, which are about the size of a golf cart. Then you got Curiosity, which is the size of a small car. And they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They use very similar technologies to get back to Mars. Thrusters, rover design, things like that. But eventually you have to fold them all up and get them into the launchers. Oh goodness, I've gone the wrong way. No! Alright, technical difficulties have been resolved. We're looking back at the article. Again, this is actually what's going to be loaded up in a rocket and then sent off to space. Now, when you're sending something to Mars in this case, there's actually a window of opportunity. You can't just pick a day and be like, we're going to launch to Mars today. Nope, there's a window of opportunity to get from here on the Earth to Mars in the most efficient manner using the gravity of the planet. And the trajectory gets calculated between our planet and Mars. You want to launch it when Mars is at a certain distance away, fairly close by, because if you miss your window, you got to wait a good 22 months, somewhere in there, before you can launch again. So July 17th is when the window opens, and we'll be looking forward to that. And if we get a live launch video at a decent hour, we'll probably do a live Twitch feed watching that rocket launch. Speaking of rocket launches, that's when I wanted to show this. This is called Launch America. There's something really special happening very, very soon. Of course, getting to space is never easy. NASA was launching humans on rockets, and then you had the multiple booster rockets on the space shuttle. Well, the space shuttle hasn't gone up in a very long time. Obviously, it was retired. And so for the first time since 2011, NASA is going to be launching astronauts to space. This time it's going to be in conjunction with SpaceX, which I have mentioned before on this channel. Cool looking new spacesuits, very futuristic, very movie star looking. This is the Dragon launch capsule, Crew Dragon I should say. This is where everybody's going to be inside and hopefully be safe on their way to the space station. It's going to be next week. We're gonna hopefully have a chance to sit down and actually do a live feed, live watch. This is going to be on the 27th of May, so very, very soon, actually a week and a half away, I should say. And 4:30 or so, 4:32 Eastern, so that's 2:32 in my time zone, so I will definitely be here talking about this on the interwebs, and I hope you will be here with me to watch and learn all about rocketry, space science, and getting people up into space safely, I hope. Get some tools, get some equipment and food, and resupply the International Space Station. And again, I will be here to do a live feed on that. Really hoping it goes well. I haven't seen a human space launch like this from NASA in obviously a good 9 years. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you will be too. I think that's pretty much everything we wanted to talk about this week. Yeah, checklist real quick. Yep, got that. Yep, got it all done. My little notebook says I'm done here, so we're done. We appreciate you joining us, giving us 15-20 minutes of your time, because I know you could be doing other things with your life, but you, for some reason, chose to sit here and listen to me babble, which is appreciated. Links will be, again, down below for all the articles we've talked about, and also links to our Facebook page, as well as our Patreon and our coffee page if you want to buy a coffee or a ramen for us, or green tea. Not required, but always, always thankful. for anything anybody wants to chip our way, especially if it's through Patreon and actually lets us go and buy some new hard drives, because as we make more and more videos, these hard drives are going to run out of space. Nonetheless, we appreciate your time. Hope some of that was interesting to you. We will catch you next week with another one of these Friday 3 o'clock coffees. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, lunchtime, wherever you happen to be. Take care of yourselves, and yeah, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.